I'm so pissed off.
Is it fair to say then John Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Yes. Okay. Very fair.
Some amazing fights, but we can do better than this. We can do better than this. I've made my own White House card, which isn't in fairy tale land, like a lot of people's White House cards were, because we're going to go through that in today's video as well. But we can do better than this. Bo Nickel versus Kyle Daukaus is not a matchup where you're like, we've got to save this for the White House card. Put it in the Apex.
Jones would have probably taken down Pereira. Wouldn't have been easy, right? Magomed Ankalaev has tried to do that. Other people have tried to do that. Jan Blachowicz tried to do that. But this is John Jones we're talking about. Look at what he did to Cyril Gane. And remember, in the first round, even Tom Aspinall couldn't take down Cyril Gane. But John could, right? So that's just something to think about. John would have probably taken Pereira down and finished him by a ground and pound, you know, choked him out, whatever. Tom, in any way, I wish him nothing but the best, and I want to see Tom Aspinall back in the cage doing what he does best. But I can't help but think that Eddie Hearn's kind of playing games here, but we'll see. I talked about that before. The reality of the situation is, though, he's not ready to come back just yet.
So here's the deal with Dana White right now. He's getting absolutely roasted after dropping the White House card lineup, and honestly, the backlash is intense. MMA fans and industry insiders are making their frustration known because this event was hyped beyond belief, but the actual fights announced just don't match what everyone was expecting. We're talking about legends like John Jones, Conor McGregor, and Islam Makhachev completely absent from what was marketed as this generation-defining spectacular. The entire MMA world is feeling that sting of disappointment, and it's spreading fast.
White House card was just announced, and for what we were promised, this is a massive letdown. And I'm going to explain why this had every opportunity to bring the UFC back to prominence, to stake their claim once again as the combat sports outlet across boxing, MMA, and everything in between. And they fumbled it. Not because they had to, not because there was no other way to do it, but because the UFC is in a place right now where
John Jones went completely off the rails when he found out he wouldn't be competing on this card. The emotional response was immediate and brutal. He blasted out multiple social media posts that showed just how crushed he was by this news. This wasn't some casual disappointment we're talking about here. This was one of the most dominant fighters in UFC history having a very public breakdown about being shut out of what should have been a career-defining moment. You could feel the pain radiating through every word he posted.
I'm so pissed off.
But Dana White did step up to break down exactly why John Jones got left off the UFC White House card, and his explanation covered multiple complicated issues. He highlighted Jones's current hip problems, which are serious medical concerns that can't be brushed aside. Plus, there's the whole retirement situation that creates additional complications for any potential booking. Dana made it clear that regardless of any conversations that might have taken place or interest from both parties, these roadblocks ultimately made it impossible to make the fight happen for this specific card, no matter how badly everyone wanted to see it go down.
There is speculation, of course, that it's John Jones.
No, it's not.
Was John
Ever, which I told you guys 100,000 times, was John Jones even remotely in my mind to fight at the White House. I wouldn't. First of all, I've told you why I wouldn't do it. And number two, some guy with, meta glasses on filmed him talking about his hips, that his hips are so bad. And I don't know if you guys saw that flag football game where he can barely run. John Jones he retired because of his hips. He's got arthritis in his hips. Add that on top of all the other reasons that I wouldn't. The John Jones thing is bullshit. I'm not saying they weren't talking to John Jones and that John Jones wasn't interested in the fight. And what was even crazier is John Jones came out and was like, I'm in negotiations right now for the White House fight, after I had already sent a text to his lawyer saying, never going to happen ever.
Is it fair to say then John Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Absolutely understandable. John Jones responded with what you'd have to call total shock after getting official word that he was excluded from the UFC White House card. He publicly challenged the entire decision-making process, and the genuine confusion in his voice was obvious when he talked about being left out of this supposedly historic showcase. We're dealing with Jon Jones here, the man who many consider the greatest pound-for-pound fighter who ever lived, and he's getting benched for a card that's meant to highlight the absolute pinnacle of the sport at the White House, no less. He dropped the bombshell statement saying, "I'm released from the UFC," which obviously sent shockwaves through the entire community. Jon Jones's emotional pain became even more raw as he kept processing what was happening to him. He shared that this whole mess was cutting him deep on a personal level. The hurt was unmistakable when he said, "Lying in my bed, wrapping my head around this perception. All I can think is how painful, man, how painful." This goes way beyond business dealings for him. This is hitting his core and affecting him emotionally in ways that anyone watching can clearly see. But there's this fascinating internal struggle happening with Jon Jones too. Like he's questioning whether his reaction makes sense or if he's going overboard with his response. Despite that self-doubt though, the disappointment was still crushing him completely. He admitted, and then the other half of me is like, but is it really though? Which reveals he's genuinely wrestling with these emotions and trying to separate reality from perception. Now Ariel Helwani, who has some of the most reliable connections in MMA, reported that the UFC actually made legitimate efforts to get Jon Jones on the White House card. This matters because it pushes back against any narrative that they never wanted him involved from the start. But Ariel also added this curious detail, saying that the highly anticipated fight everyone was discussing, the one that allegedly collapsed, wasn't actually the bout that fell apart last night, based on what his sources told him. So obviously there are layers to this story that aren't being revealed publicly, and the sequence of events is way more complicated than anyone realizes.
They did seriously try to have Jon Jones on this card, and they couldn't get to the number. Now, a lot of people are talking about this fight that fell through. I don't think that that's the fight that fell through last night. That's not
what I heard. Jon Jones really started tearing apart the whole negotiation process, and it was obvious he felt like his time had been wasted, or maybe he'd been deliberately deceived. He completely refused to go along with publicly supporting some version of events that didn't align with his actual experience. Jones came out swinging, saying, "So all of this negotiating was complete? Is that what you want me to agree to publicly?" The anger in that statement is unmistakable, like he's being pressured to endorse a story that contradicts what he lived through. Then Jon Jones really went for it directly, calling out Dana White and questioning whether exposing the UFC president would somehow make him the villain in this whole mess. It's this impossible situation where he feels trapped between truth and public perception. He asked if I would prove him wrong, would I be wrong? Which is actually a pretty profound question about narrative control and media manipulation. Jones made it brutally clear that being forced to admit the negotiations were fake, being pushed to say that serious discussions never took place or weren't legitimate, would be completely unacceptable to him. He stated, "If I'm supposed to publicly agree that our negotiations was a lie, we have a problem, and that's about as direct as anyone can be. This isn't someone who's going to play along with a sanitized story just to make things easier for everyone else." Then Ariel Helwani jumped in to provide some crucial context that helps explain the confusion. He verified that Jon Jones was absolutely in real discussions for the White House card, confirming that negotiations definitely took place. They were legitimate, they were substantial. But here's the critical detail: the deal never actually got finalized. They talked, they negotiated back and forth, but they couldn't reach that final agreement. Ariel pointed out that the decision to keep everything private actually made strategic sense, especially considering all the heat and criticism the card was already taking. Ariel Helwani broke it all down, saying in since-deleted tweets, Jon Jones responds to the narrative that he was never in the running to fight on the White House card for what it's worth. Jones is 100% right. They did talk, they did negotiate, they just didn't close the deal. Not sure why Dana said otherwise yesterday. Well, I guess I do know. Why would you want to admit, when everyone is trashing a card, that you couldn't agree to terms with a massive name like Jones? It's a brilliant observation about the public relations aspect of this whole situation. Jon Jones clearly feels like he's gonna get stuck with all the responsibility for this deal falling apart, no matter what. Really went down behind closed doors, or who's actually at fault? He summarized it perfectly, saying, "I'll be the fall guy," which shows he believes the story is being crafted to make him look like the problem. Meanwhile, Tom Aspinall had his own thoughts about the UFC White House card, and his reaction was full of genuine surprise and confusion about the whole situation. He specifically called out Jon Jones's absence, pointing to his own assumptions about what the fights would look like, and it was clear he was struggling to understand why certain matchups weren't materializing. Tom recognized that while there are still quality fights on the card, legitimate exciting matchups that fans will appreciate, he emphasized that he still has unresolved issues with Cyril Gane. That's clearly a fight that holds personal significance for him, and he stays committed to ensuring that opportunity happens eventually, whether it's on this card or somewhere down the road.
So surely him and Topuria.
It's got to be him and Topuria then, hasn't it? It's like he just woke up. What about John Jones? I thought John Jones was on it.
Where's he gone?
Where's he gone, John? So that's it, no prelims, just that.
Yeah. Just whilst that plays out, what's your thoughts? Can you put this down a tiny bit?
I thought they were going to do Topuria versus Makhachev, is what I thought. And then they were going to do Pereira versus Jones. I mean, they're still decent fights. They're still all right. I mean, they're still good fights, aren't they?
I have to ask you about that Pereira-Gan fight. If obviously Pereira wins, you all good with that?
Mate, I'm happy with any of them. There's still a bit of unfinished business there with me and Gan, so if Pereira wins, fight Pereira first, fight Gan next.
Israel Adesanya is picking Alex Pereira to beat Cyril Gane at the White House card, and his prediction comes with serious conviction. He's saying he truly believes Pereira possesses the knockout power and striking skills to end the fight, even though Gane has that slick footwork and defensive style that's frustrated so many opponents before. Izzy understands both fighters intimately, having analyzed their approaches extensively, and his opinion carries significant weight considering his championship-level experience.
They had to make do with what they have. They would have loved to have Jones on there, but I hope Alex wins. That's crazy. Like 3 times. Yeah. Gon's no joke, and Gon can dance around him. Gon's slick to knock him out as well. But I think Alex can knock him out too.
At the same time, other developments are generating major buzz, with Dana White confirming that discussions with Conor McGregor are actively continuing, so that door remains wide open. But and this is crucial, he also emphasizes that they are nowhere close to establishing any concrete timeline for Conor's actual return to competition. So yes, conversations are happening, but don't hold your breath for an announcement anytime soon. This is clearly going to be a lengthy process, and there are obviously numerous variables that need to be resolved before we see the notorious one back in action.
Is there any update on when or if he'll fight again?
No, but we are definitely talking to Conor, obviously.
But there's no
timetable, you just have to wait. But Conor McGregor himself has a totally different perspective on the whole situation, and he's being brutally honest about his view of UFC business practices. He argues that the UFC intentionally keeps him off major cards like this White House event, and his logic is actually pretty compelling. According to Conor, they understand he drives pay-per-view sales and creates enormous revenue no matter what card he appears on, so they strategically deploy him to elevate the performance of weaker shows that might otherwise struggle. It's this whole concept that he's being used as a financial weapon, instead of being showcased on the biggest platforms where he feels he deserves to be based on his achievements and mainstream appeal.
You want me to gates and secondary sales? They don't usually put me on UFC 200 or 300 or the Sphere. They usually put me on UFC 201 or 301. You know, like a double sale thing. That's the White House is going to hit no matter what. Who the fuck gives a fuck who we put on it? And then wheel McGregor out for the second one. So we double our economic take. We can't decide what these men do, you know, and I don't want to. They, you know, I don't doubt them. It's like in this current climate, we're all cattle. Yeah, all these fighters were all cattle. I just happen to be free range. I'm like Wagyu walking around the fucking farm.
Conor McGregor drops even more specific information about his White House card situation, and it gets really fascinating. He claims he was originally scheduled to fight Michael Chandler at the White House event, which would have been an absolutely explosive fight that fans have been demanding for ages. But according to Conor, the UFC kept shifting the arrangements, constantly presenting different proposals and moving the targets. It sounds like there was genuine chaos in the planning process, at least from his point of view, which would understandably create frustration when you're trying to prepare for what's supposed to be a landmark event.
So, as I was aware, it was the White House. I was up for the White House. I know the administration was strong for me to be in the White House. It was McGregor versus Chandler. The story was built in. Chandler's a stand-up guy. He's electric in the cage. He comes to bring it. I'm the Mac. It would have been dynamite. somewhere down the line, not me ever saying no or hey ho, not enough money or no, nothing. Just, maybe we're going to go with you for international fight week. Okay, no problem. Maybe we're going to leave Chandler. I do like Chandler. I must have been preparing for him for the last few years. He deserves to go after the waiting, and it would be a great fight. It gets me back in there, but they veered off it. I'm not gonna be too picky. I have to get back. I'm eager to get back. I've been out and looked myself. So okay, sorry, Chandler. It is what it is. What weight, Conor, are you gonna do? I'm gonna do 170, as you know. I'm a big boy, a lot bigger than before. Okay, well, we're gonna offer you this opponent. Yes, no problem. I accept. Day after day after day. No problem. We'll send the contract. Excellent. It's a great matchup. That's a great matchup. That's a great matchup. That's all you ever heard about out of me. And no contract came. And that's kind of where I'm at. Still here in this limbo. I know my manager is out there in Las Vegas on Monday, face-to-face meeting. I hope a respectable offer comes through. I'm notoriously good to deal with. I'm an honest man. I admire fairness. I'm sure we can get it done. And there you go. I assume the vibes I'm getting, and I don't mind it at all, is the BMF contest, which was on this week, a rematch between Holloway and Oliveira. Maybe it's me and that for the next one. So we will see. It's all taking shape. There's so much happening in the fight world. It's actually incredible what's going on in the fight world. It's a great time to be a fight fan.
But you've got Justin Gaethje, who had a completely opposite experience in response to everything. He reacted to his fight with Ilia Topuria being confirmed for the White House card by expressing genuine pride and enthusiasm about the opportunity. He's describing it as an incredible experience, and it's obvious he's excited to be part of what's developing into a significant moment in UFC history, despite the controversy around some of the fights that didn't materialize.
It was amazing. I kind of knew, but I'm not almost crying, but I'm very proud. Promise.
What's absolutely crazy about Gaetzevia's situation is that he reveals he was initially informed he wouldn't be competing at the White House event at all. Picture processing that letdown, accepting that you're not going to be included in this historic card, and then discovering that actually you would be featured after all. That's gotta be a complete emotional whirlwind, going from disappointment to excitement, and it demonstrates just how chaotic the planning process for this event has been backstage.
2 days ago, I got a call and they said, "You're definitely not fighting on the White House card." So I was like,
wow, really?
Cool.
Okay.
And then yesterday I got a call and they said, "You might hear something. You might be on the White House card." And I was like, how are you gonna go complete 180 turn on me? And then today I found out that I was on it. I didn't know if I was main event.
Really? Oh, so it was a big secret. Even the fighters didn't know. Dana White also stepped forward to clarify something crucial about Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev, because there's been massive speculation about whether that was the fight that collapsed. He makes it clear that this potential matchup is not the fight that fell apart on Friday, which is important because so many people were assuming that's exactly what happened. He points out that Topuria wasn't initially booked for the card anyway, and that Islam Makhachev is currently dealing with a real hand injury that would have made the fight impossible regardless. Dana is stressing that people should really only treat officially announced fights as legitimate, rather than getting swept up in rumors and speculation about what might have been discussed privately.
And the White House card, there's a lot of reporting out of Spain today saying that it was going to be Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, and that fight fell apart on Friday. True. Well, Justin Gaethje also said he was told Thursday he wasn't on the card, and then on Friday he was.
That is true.
What happened with Islam, I guess, because you know how fans are, a lot of them.
That's not true, I said.
Sure. So
it was never Islam versus Topuria, yeah.
So anyone who thinks Islam ducked this fight or anything like that, it's all incorrect.
Don't worry about what fights are being made. We announce which ones are made and which ones will be happening. I told you there were some weird circumstances. The reason that fight fell out, and it wasn't up on stage with Mick Hunter and Sean, it was that power slap that the fight fell apart that night. That's how Gaethje ended up on the card. And Topuria wasn't originally supposed to be on the card either, so he got the call too.
When can we expect to see Islam Makhachev back?
I don't know. He's got some hand issues. I know that. I don't know how serious the hand issues are or how long that will keep him out, but yeah, he's injured.
Sean O'Malley has his own powerful opinion about what should have gone down with the card, and he's completely open about sharing it. He thinks that Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev should have been the fight headlining the White House card, and he builds a strong argument for it. He's pointing to Topuria's recent victories and amazing climb up the rankings, and he's arguing this is the matchup that fans truly want to see happen next. According to Suga, this would have been the ideal main event that would have delivered on the hype and expectations that were created around this event.
Ilia is one of the greatest of all time. I think he's going to go down as, he knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, knocked out Max Holloway, knocked out Charles Oliveira, back to back, knocked out 3 Hall of Famers in a row.
And do you think he would beat Islam Makhachev?
It's definitely possible. Those guys, number 1 and number 2 pound for pound in the world, I think that's the fight we need to see next. It sucks because Islam's probably not going to come back down to 155. Ilia going up to 170 doesn't make, he's not a huge guy. He's definitely, he could be walking around 185, 190. He's pretty thick. So I think that's the fight that I'd like.
But here's what really demonstrates Sean O'Malley's attitude and his eagerness to seize major opportunities. He also admitted that he actually pleaded to be included on the White House card, and he was ready to fight absolutely anyone they matched him with. He's saying he would have taken on Ilia Topuria Islam Makhachev, or even Khabib, if somehow that was possible. That's the kind of self-belief and hunger that's made O'Malley such a captivating personality in the sport. He's not avoiding anyone, and he wanted to be part of this historic moment, no matter how dangerous the opposition might be.
I'm fighting GSP at the White House. I just kidding, I tricked you guys. The fight name is a hobby. I told UFC, I would love to fight at the White House. I will fight anybody at the White House. I will fight Ilia. I will fight Islam. I will fight Khabib. No, but for real, I said I want to fight on the White House card. Please let me fight on the White House card. I don't care who it is. I want to be on there. I want the opportunity to, I fought at the Sphere, which is really cool. The White House, I think there's 6 fights on the White House card. There's me plus 11 other people that get to make the walk from the Oval Office. That's what they're saying. You walk from the Oval Office into the White House lawn. Crazy how secret this card has been. I knew about this literally only like a week ago. I don't know who the main event is. The fight's gonna be outside. Our family's gonna be able to come. Like they're saying how many millions of dollars they're spending on security alone. We're gonna go out there and beat the fuck out of this guy. I go out there and win this fight, I'm next in line for a title. I actually wanted to fight. I really was like, yo, let me fight Peter at the White House. They didn't say that. They said, nah, man.
Meanwhile, Ariel Helwani, who's got one of the most trusted voices in MMA media, is describing the White House card as a very solid lineup despite all the drama. He's praising it significantly and really emphasizing the excitement of having both Topuria and Pereira on the same event, which he says is truly appealing for fans. But he's also recognizing that expectations for this card stayed incredibly high, and that's part of what's generating the pressure. People were anticipating something completely unprecedented, and while the card is quality, it might not reach those massive expectations that were established.
Video, I give it a 9 out of 10. Like in a vacuum, this is the best pay-per-view card that we've gotten in God knows when, right? In terms of the superstars. But it's because the expectations were put here that some people, by the time June 14th rolls around, everyone's going to be going gaga. You've got Ilia and Alex on the same card. Crazy. Alex trying to make history. Ilia finally coming back almost a year to the date of his last fight. Justin looked great in his last fight. And then you sprinkle in Sean O'Malley and all these guys like that. Compare that to tonight's card. Compare that to the Sydney pay-per-view. Compare that to January 24th.
No,
Kayla should have been on this card. There's 2 surprises. Well, not surprises. Kayla should have been on the card, but she's just on 100%, and that's a bummer. And the Gable Steveson, I was told that was discussed to have him debut on this card. 2-time Olympic gold medalist. Oh, he's not on the card. That would have been kind of.
That would have been great.
So
actually, Ariel Helwani had to explain his evaluation of the White House card because people were questioning how he could rate it so positively given all the absent elements. He clarified that he rated it highly based on a practical assessment of the available roster and the fights that are realistically possible to create, rather than measuring it against some exaggerated fantasy version that was never going to exist. He specifically mentioned several missing fights that would have taken the card to another level, including Kayla's title defense and the dream fight of Jones versus Pereira, which would have absolutely shattered social media. Ariel explained his reasoning, saying, "When I say 9 out of 10, I say that while taking a realistic look at the roster and the management's ability to make mega fights. Not some unrealistic fantasy we were sold about 8 title fights. And Conor being on it, none of that was ever going to happen. I wish Kayla was on here. It should be Armin in the main, but they needed an American there. So all in all, I'm at peace with it. Only whiff is Jones versus Pereira, and it's a big whiff, no doubt. It's a balanced perspective that tries to reconcile expectations with reality."
Ilia versus Gage is a good fight, but like no chance to Gage. Ilya has a better boxing, and I think he's gonna knock him out. They just waste time, waste my time. They gotta put me versus Ilya, and I'll take his belt, and easy money for me.
But you've got Arman Tsarukyan with a completely opposite and pretty brutal opinion. He's describing the Ilya Topuria versus Justin Gaethje fight as a complete waste of time, which is a harsh assessment that implies he thinks this matchup doesn't make sense from a competitive or rankings perspective. That's a controversial stance that's obviously going to create debate, especially considering Gaethje's enthusiasm about the fight.
I don't know. I'm not thrilled with Arman right now. And there's a lot of different reasons. It's not just the stuff that you see publicly.
But yeah, Dana can't elaborate on any of those reasons. And this is interesting timing. Dana White says he isn't exactly happy with Arman right now. He's suggesting that there are several reasons behind his irritation that extend beyond what's public knowledge. There's clearly some backstage tension or disagreement happening that we're not completely aware of. And Dana's remarks suggest that Arman's public criticism might not be improving his relationship with the UFC president.
Dana and the entire UFC and the teases that have come from being this, insane, massive card, putting it together, how it was going to blow everything out of the water, it was going to be badass and all this. The hype around this has been ridiculous. And it's given you a sense of like, oh man, something big is coming. Something, along the lines of a UFC 100, 200, 300, or like when, again, Conor McGregor Habib was announced. Conor McGregor came back to the Donald Cerrone fight was announced. When Jorge Masvidal fought Nate Diaz for the BMF, when George St. Pierre came back at UFC 217, it had that kind of feel to it. And I think that's the biggest problem I have right now, was the hype did not match the delivery. This is like ordering Domino's pizza and somehow Little Caesars is delivered. You don't know how it got there. It's definitely not what you asked for. It's clearly not what you were promised, but it's pizza, so you'll eat it.
This is kind of how I feel. Bisping entered the discussion with his own thoughts about the card, and he confessed something that probably many fans are considering. He said that the Conor vs. Diaz trilogy would have been incredibly exciting and packed with the kind of energy that creates legendary pay-per-views. Bisping declared Conor McGregor vs. Nate Diaz 3 has never looked better and more realistic than it does after that main event. Take us back to the golden age one more time. There's genuine nostalgia there for the kind of super fights that defined a golden era of the UFC. But Bisping also attacked the UFC White House card from a different angle, saying that the promotion absolutely didn't deliver on the actual product. He compared the situation to anticipating a luxury 5-star experience only to receive something that's decent but not quite at that elite level you were guaranteed. It's about the disconnect between expectations and reality, and that's really what's fueling much of the criticism and disappointment surrounding this card. So that wraps up everything we've covered in today's breakdown. And honestly, there's so much complexity here about the White House card and all the controversy swirling around it. We really want to hear your perspective, so make sure to drop your thoughts about the White House card in the comments section below. Are you happy with the lineup as it exists with fighters like Topuria and Pereira leading the charge? Or are you in the group that feels disappointed by the absence of Jones-McGregor and some of the other dream fights that didn't happen? Tell us exactly where you stand on this entire situation, because the MMA community is obviously split on whether this card delivers on the hype or comes up short. And definitely make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible content, breaking down all the latest news, drama, and developments in the world of mixed martial arts. We've got plenty more material headed your way, so smash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the excitement.